Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Tim Munden. Tim is the Chief Learning Officer at Unilever. Tim, welcome to the show. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tim, for those that aren't aware of you and sort of not come across you before, could you give us a quick overview of your background and your journey to where we are today?
Sure, yes. So I'm currently Chief Learning Officer, as you said, and I'm also responsible for Wellbeing at Unilever. I've been at Unilever for actually 25 years this year, which I never planned to have. My career started in the British Army. They paid for my education and paid for me to go to university. And then unfortunately I got injured actually playing sport and got retired early. So I then had to find a new career and ended up in Unilever. I've been an HR business partner for most of that time. I've worked in North and South America, done global jobs, worked around Europe. So now I'm Chief Learning Officer, and basically I'm responsible for driving transformation and performance. And as I say, also trying to help our people have really great well-being for their own sakes, but also so we can be a really highly performing business.
Amazing. Not often I speak to someone that's been in a company that long, so I have to ask the question, what is it that gets you there for all of these years?
So I do a regular kind of check-in with myself and scan the market every time I've done the job for whatever time we're planning, which the longer jobs, it's 3-5 years or something. I go check outside, see what else is there and see how that compares. What's kept me is two things. Unilever tries to be a purpose-driven company. Our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. And so we're trying to, as we do well as a business, make the world a better place. I find that incredibly motivating. I want to make the world a better place by doing great business. And I've found that there's so far nowhere outside has managed to combine cool jobs, challenging jobs with purpose.
Amazing. And of course, as you mentioned, one of the areas of your key focus is health and well-being. Why is this such a high priority on the agenda right now for Unilever and for yourself?
Well, a few reasons, Chris. So first off, as I said, we're a purpose-driven business. If you want to make sustainable living commonplace, you need to help your people be sustainable. So and part of our purpose actually is to create 1 billion better lives and help 1 billion people have better health and well-being. We do that through our brands, through Lifebuoy, which helps to prevent diarrheal disease, which kills 100 million people a year. So sustainability is for us a big thing. It includes well-being for our consumers. It has to include well-being for our people. And then we also see in the world around us, things are getting tougher for people. There are more and more instances of mental ill health. In the UK, the figures estimate that it's 1 in 4 each year.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and we'll be touched by it. I mean, it's really staggering. And the cost to the world economy annually runs to trillions of dollars. So we feel that if we want to be a high-performing business, we need to help people to have that well-being. We also know that having strong, good well-being is what enables you to change and to be flexible to the world around you. We need that. So in summary, for us, it is purpose, it's about performance, and it's just the right thing to do.
Mm. So why are there so many businesses that don't have this on their strategic agenda? Because my next question was going to say, why should we focus on this? And you kind of answered that, all the things you just mentioned. But why are so many organizations so slow to focus enough time and have this as part of their core strategy?
I think there are many companies that haven't yet embraced the human. And I think this is the key, that organizations still think that people are economic units of work, and it's a kind of units for hands, or hands for money rather, transaction. And they haven't yet understood, amazingly, that the power of every organization lies solely in its people, and the more you embrace the humanity of the human beings you employ, the more they will bring themselves to work. I think it's as simple as that. And I think those companies that haven't yet got it are going to be under threat, because the generations coming into the workforce will not put up with that deal. They don't want to be pairs of hands for money. They want purpose. they want to be valued, they want to grow. Now, I think that's always been true, by the way, but I think there used to be this idea that when I go to work, I have to put up with stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case anymore. People won't put up with stuff. They want, if they can't find a workplace that values them, they'll just create their own.
It's almost gone 360, hasn't it? And now the almost like the employee has the power. Now, I think in the past it was the other way around. I'm seeing it more and more now. We're in the power. We have the choice of where we go and how we work. You know, it's so open now as well.
Yes.
So I was going to ask you what the implications were, but what do you think the implications are for companies that don't do this?
Well, as I say, I think people won't want to work there. I think that so we're in a world of enormous change. Enormous change requires adaptability and creativity. And I think the companies that don't embrace the whole humanity of their teams will not be adaptable and they won't be creative. So I'm very confident that we're moving into an era now where great companies run by humans, for humans, with values and purpose will have a clear competitive advantage. There'll be the talent factories that they need to be. They'll meet consumers and customers' needs better. So I'm really optimistic about the future of business for that reason. And I think it'll be inconceivable in 10 years' time that any company has an HR strategy that does not have well-being as part of it. Yeah. As inconceivable it is to run a military unit without caring about fitness. It's never. Yeah. And it's key. I think that's a better world coming.
Yeah, definitely. So how, obviously one of the questions for a lot of organizations, they think, this costs so much money to make happen. Is it expensive? How much work needs to be done? So I'm just wondering, what type of tools, training and support do you offer your leaders in the business to help them with this?
So that's a really cool question. I'm glad you asked it, Chris, because that is what people feel. They feel that it's going to cost a fortune to have a program on wellbeing, and it really doesn't. So Unilever is a big business. We have got resources to invest, and I'll tell you about those in a sec. But I wanted to kind of hammer the point first that one, it doesn't cost a lot of money. A few months ago, we hosted an event here in Unilever with the Duke of Cambridge and Heads Together, that fantastic campaign that they're spearheading about ending the stigma around mental health. And we had a panel discussion, and we had a person from a tiny business up in Sheffield, real small kind of company, and she wanted to get something going on wellbeing, and so she persuaded the management team to give her £4,000 to get a program going. She said she ended up spending about £3,000, and she has a program going. You don't need a ton of money. Now, the other thing I wanted to say, and I hope you don't mind me giving a little bit of a plug, but there's tons of free materials also available. If you want to build a wellbeing program, if you're listening to this from the UK, then Time to Change, fantastic organisation, has resources you can use. Also Mind, great charity on this area. There are free resources out there, particularly around mental health. So this doesn't have to cost a lot of money, which I also feel like saying to us all, there's no excuse not to have a wellbeing program. Now, the question you actually asked was about leaders. So what we've been doing is training our line managers in mental health first aid, really big program around the world. And we found that's made a big difference. So investing in line managers to be trained so that they can be aware, so that they're more comfortable asking the questions they need to ask. How are you? And really listening to that answer. And then if somebody starts to say, well, actually, I'm feeling under pressure, to be able to understand why, and then to signpost to help. We're not trying to turn our line managers into counsellors. We're trying to get them skilled enough to just understand and signpost to help, and to create a space which is safe for people to talk about their well-being.
So what does that training look like? Is it sort of a group training? Is it one-to-one? How do you manage that? Because I'm wondering, especially with such a large organization like you, what does it look like? So
we've turned that into a half-day workshop with a reasonable number of line managers in the room. And we, as I say, we use the mental health first aid program. They're an organisation, and they have a number of different versions of this. But often it's a day long So it's a day, half a day, and group learning. We also have some online resources, online training resources for line managers, which is also important because actually often a line manager won't have to engage in, for example, a conversation about mental health for quite a while. And we want to make sure that there's things there when they need them to give them the kind of the confidence and a little reminder about what to do. The other thing that we've done, and I'm really proud of this, I have to say, is from this month, every country in which Unilever operates has an employee assistance program in place. All bar one. I'm afraid we haven't quite finished yet, but that's kind of over 100 countries. And so people think of employee assistance programs as kind of this very basic thing, and they are very basic, but they're really, really valuable. So it means that an employee or their family can ring 24 hours a day or find resources online for any kinds of issues, kind of legal, financial, medical, mental health. And that safety net, I think, is a really, really big deal.
Yeah. Is that something you built internally?
We use external suppliers around the world for that.
Could you let us know who they are, or is it something you built from scratch?
We use a whole number actually, because not everybody's strong.
Oh, okay. And I'm just wondering if there's a particular organisation out there that everyone could sort of look at and refer to. But I suppose it's going to differ depending on the business.
Yeah, we have a couple of big partners, but they also use subcontractors in different places. Mm-hmm. But it's a very mature market now, actually. So the global organisations kind of listening into this again. The world has moved on, and we have an employee assistance program in, as I say, all countries bar one. So, and we are in many small remote countries. So this is a great thing that the market for services to help us create healthy, vibrant workplaces is really developing around the world.
Mm-hmm. When did you guys start this journey?
So a little bit of our history.
Yeah.
People may not know this. Unilever is a merger of different businesses, but one of the parts of that is Lever Brothers, founded up in the northwest of the UK in the 1880s. And our founder, William Hesketh Lever, who became Lord Leverhulme, built hospitals and houses for his workforce. His belief, he actually had a purpose to make cleanliness commonplace. Which ours now
back then was a big deal.
It was a huge deal.
It was a huge deal, yeah.
So in Victorian England, a lack of cleanliness was killing people.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
He brought soap, he brought it at quality, he brought it at a price people couldn't afford. But he had a passion for the well-being of his people. So, as I say, he built a village, he built a hospital. Lord Leverhulme was very involved also in the early pension schemes. He laid the first bill before Parliament for pensions to be brought into the United Kingdom. So this is part of our heritage. So one answer to your question, where does this come from, is it's part of Unilever's heritage. And we've kept that modern and up to date with a lot of healthcare around the world. And about 5-6 years ago, we realized that the pressure on mental health was accelerating in society. Because it's another important point. When people hear business leaders talk about mental health, people assume, oh, you're talking about the pressure and anxiety that comes from work. I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about all of it. Because if you're running a business, whatever's going on out in society is coming into your office. And in fact, most people who experience mental health it's not coming from their work. But of course, it shows up in work. And we have to care about it in work. And I also passionately believe that the workplace is a great place to give people support on their mental health. And because there's close engagement, there's colleagues around. So that our history is long in care, but we have to update it. And unfortunately, the World Health Organization predicts that by 2030, mental health will, in fact, depression alone will be the biggest cause of the disease burden in the world.
Wow.
So this is a big issue, which we have to, I think, as employers and as HR people, we have to really, really lean into.
Mm-hmm. So for yourself personally, how long have you been leading this? You mentioned now it's part of your role.
So I got involved in my last job. I was the vice president of HR for Unilever in the UK and Ireland. And I got very involved in it in that role, and I basically continued that since.
Can you share some feedback that you got from your leaders and also people that have been helped by the programs that you've put together?
Yes. What can I say?
I suppose it's just a sensitive area, and there's a lot of.
But the feedback is strong. So it's been a journey. I'll be open. It's been a journey with some of our senior business leaders of them moving from thinking this. Tim's talking about this in the UK. It must be a UK problem. To actually, once we got a conversation going, this is a world phenomenon.
Yeah.
And then there's been a journey of business leaders thinking, okay, this is a welfare issue we need to support, to more and more of them understanding, actually, this is a core HR, it's a capability, strategic capability thing we need to get right. But we've talked, but also it's been a journey for us of setting it in context. One of the things I realized was you can't actually talk about mental health in isolation. So we now talk about a well-being model that we have around Unilever, which says that it sets out that to have well-being, a person needs physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and purposeful well-being. So we try and now talk about those 4 different areas and build all our programs around those 4 areas.
Those core values.
Yeah, and they're basically, it's like a little checklist for yourself, but also ways that we can guide people to support and programs that they may need, but also a way of giving permission to people to talk about those different areas. And for us, of course, at the core of having a purposeful business is you've got to have purposeful people, but also purpose, having meaning in your work, having meaning in your life is core to having well-being. So you see how those kind of things link together. So we spend a lot of time helping people have purpose, find their purpose, which connects to the rest of what I do in my learning.
Fantastic. It's great that you're also working directly in a function which can have so much more effect as well in what you do as well, which is amazing. What advice would you give to companies that are just starting out and, that want to develop a wellbeing program in their business? What are some of the first steps they can take? I think that's the hard part, really, just getting started. And where do we start? Where do we focus our attention? What does that look like?
So I think that the key, it's important to, I think, involve people early. Most companies either have or can put together a group of employee representatives who can sit together and talk. I think understanding what people are actually experiencing, again, not just experiencing in the workplace, but what's coming from home, what's happening around the workplace. Because then people will guide you into, here's the kind of areas we want support. And again, support doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So let me take a particular example. I'm very passionate about mindfulness as a core element of having well-being and really promoting well-being. And there are expensive kind of apps out there, and they're really cool.
I've got a few of those.
Sorry?
I've got a few of those, like Headspace.
Exactly, it's brilliant. It's a fantastic product, and we give access to our employees in the UK for it. But there's also Calm, which is a completely free app. Mm-hmm. So I think it's not about always paying lots of money. It's also about kind of, so can we use a free app and get some things going in the workplace? So that's one place I would start, is talk to people. The other place I would start is the Time to Change pledge. So this is a really cool thing. So Time to Change, the organisation, have a thing called the Employer Pledge. You could find it on their website. And that helps to give a bit of structure, particularly with senior leaders, to thinking about well-being. Again, this is for kind of the people listening from the UK. So what the Time to Change pledge basically is a commitment to put a plan in place to help people, particularly on the mental well-being side. And there's resources that go with that. I found that a really good way of actually crystallizing leadership commitment and making a public statement. So I think those are 2 good places to start. Start with talking to your people, start with engaging your business leaders in the Time to Change pledge, and then you can build it from there.
Mm-hmm. For you, what is the, maybe an obvious question for you, what does, successful health and well-being look like, and what impact do you feel that will have on businesses if they really commit to it?
So I think it looks like, so in terms of having a successful program, I think what I would be looking for is really clear prevention, what are you doing to help people be strong? So I think that's about giving access to gyms if you can, to things like mindfulness, to all those positive things, training the line managers. Then I think there's support things. So what, if someone is struggling, help putting in place either the resources yourself or making sure that the signposting to help is really clear.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, if there's people listening here from SMEs that think, well, this bloke from Unilever, he's got.
I think that is a concern for a lot of businesses that I speak to. So I'm glad that you're touching on this.
So there's a really cool thing coming. So listen up and wait. So later this year, Heads Together, which is, as I say, is the campaign run by the Royal Foundation, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and Prince Harry. So Heads Together is working with Mind to create resources for SMEs to use to help promote mental health in their workplace. So those were announced a few months ago. They're doing the work, and that will look like a gateway, a portal in which line managers in small companies can go and find support. So that they can help to manage wellbeing, resources for individuals. So I think the need for support for SMEs in the UK is very, very clearly understood, and some good work by really good organisations led by Mind is going into that.
Amazing. And as I'm sure as well, I think the main thing is also they have a community of people around them they can talk with, right?
Yeah,
and that's the problem because I'm sure you have many peers and partners in a big company like Unilever, but for a lot of small organizations, it's just they're very much isolated. Yes. So having an amazing community and those resources that they can tap into is going to be very valuable.
I think so. So that helps with the support piece. So I think a great program has prevention. It has support. I think it's also, as far as you can, has some measurements, some tracking. Understanding how people are feeling as far as you can, and measuring the impact of what you do. So that's what I think a good program should have. And I think the consequences, to begin with, when you start to particularly give people permission to talk openly about their well-being, some of your numbers get worse. Because you find out that more people maybe are struggling with their mental health than were saying so before. Shockingly, research has found that 95% of people in the UK who are off sick with a mental health issue lie about it. 95%. So,
I was going to ask you that because they may feel that their employer, it may affect their work, their job. Is that something that you found as a barrier?
This is well known around the world, and it's happening even in a country as relatively advanced as the UK. There is stigma, and we need to get over this. And part of getting over it is by just giving people the permission to speak openly about their mental health. And the more people do that, the more I think others understand that this is nothing to be afraid of. It's normal. It will happen to many of us, and it just needs good support, good treatment, and good prevention.
I've seen a few companies now that have taken it a step further, and I don't know if you agree on this because it's quite controversial, where they're now asking employees, I'm not going to mention the names of the companies because I might get in trouble, but they can sign up to an app that can monitor their health and well-being through, like the Apple Healthcare app, yes. Where it can monitor, their steps they're taking a day and their health, and it has the heart monitor on it and all of that stuff. Do you think that's a step too far? And the company's then using that data to monitor their employees, but then I'm getting the other story of people saying, I don't want that invasive invasion of my privacy, and that's a step too far. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's a conversation I hear coming up more and more.
And it's bound to, isn't it? We now have such fantastic technology.
Exactly, yeah.
So we are offering our employees an app. We're piloting it in the UK and in Turkey, working with a partner, and we're offering them an app to use, which gives them kind of data, and they can then set goals, and they can access our resources through it. But we would never force anyone to do that.
Before we wrap up then, what would be, if there's like one piece of advice you could give to leaders out there, what would that be?
So I'm going to offer two things, if I may. The first,
Sure, as many as you want.
well, the first piece of advice I give all our own leaders is about purposefulness. Be purposeful in your leadership, and be clear about your own purpose. Be clear about the purpose of the organisation you're in, and really work from purpose. Because as we do that as leaders, I think we lift the level of our leadership beyond the transactional stuff of the everyday, beyond management, and into something which much more meets human beings' needs and aspirations. The second thing is about humanity. That I think as leaders, particularly, but in fact, as people in business, I think we're living in an era where the technology that we have is actually going to enable us to be more human than ever. And the most human workplaces will be the most successful, the most productive, the most attractive. And I think we should, those of us in the people profession, should be really leading the way on that. And as I said before, I'm hugely excited about that.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And I know there's so much actionable advice there. So I know our members are going to be a lot better off for it. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
No worries. Thank you very much for giving me the chance, Chris. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, I'm definitely have to drop you an email after this to get all of those links of those resources to share with the team. As always, guys, head over to hrleaders.com. I'll post all the show notes on episode, and all of the links that we've discussed I'll post in the description for you guys. Tim, thanks you again for joining us, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Great. Cheers now.